So if you want to break down old belief systems, if you want to create new ones that actually support the reality that you want, it's about defining, okay, what is the current belief systems that I have that might be holding me back? What do I believe about the world? Do I believe that money's hard to get? Do I believe that relationships are really difficult? I'm always going to attract, someone that's not ideal. What belief systems do you have? If you can define that, which there's a process for doing that. But if you can define that, but then also define what would I rather believe, what belief system would support me, even if you don't believe it right now, because you might be thinking to yourself like, but I do believe I'm unlovable. And you're trying to create this new belief system. So define the belief system that you want and then start creating experiences to back that. And meanwhile, start breaking down the old ones and start to realize that just because you had an experience there doesn't make that belief system real. Just because money's been hard to get doesn't mean that it is hard to get.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes too, there's that cognitive dissonance, that bias that we have where we see the world through a certain filter based on the belief that we already have. So like our brain is looking for the evidence that supports the belief that we already have rather than finding the evidence that may be just as real and just as, palpable in our field or in our life, but our eyes are like attuned to the evidence that is familiar, let's say. And so like the familiar discomfort actually starts to feel like comfort as it relates to our like belief, because we're looking for the evidence that supports that when we could just like look in a different direction and find evidence to support a different belief.
Absolutely. And you can find evidence to support almost any belief system. So what belief systems do you want? What are belief systems that are going to serve you versus ones that are not going to serve you? Mm-hmm. And let's begin to break down those. But sometimes we're really unconscious of what we believe because we almost think that it is reality because we've experienced it so many times. And that's like the beauty of shadow work. It's looking at the unconscious, which is what shadow work basically stands for, is like looking at the shadow, looking at the unconscious, whereas light is like the conscious mind.
Yeah. So let's keep pulling on this thread because I like this a lot. I mean, just sharing openly, belief systems that have come into my life. One, we got divorced, and I still do this, and I have to watch myself because I tend to just consider marriage bullshit, because my evidence for marriage is that it was the most painful thing that ever happened to me, and so I'm consistently like I have to like unattach myself from this idea that marriage is, or I'll like, be kind of a cynical asshole when people get married, especially when they get married really young. And I'll be like, oh, Jesus. Okay, here we go. But that's because it's validated by my experience being just incredibly heartbreaking and cold, the whole process when we're super open about it, but it was not enjoyable. The other one is Christianity. And this is me witnessing it. So I'm witnessing Christianity for many, where they experience mentorship, they experience the Hierophant archetype, and they see community. They have a friend group. They also find a connection to the divine, a meditation practice that they call prayer. Rituals like communion that connects them to something metaphysical. They have ecstatic dance and sound healing through worship. And so they kind of package all of these together and go, this is God. This is my connection to God. It's the only way. And I, as myself, not being able to hit on some of those same chords of resonance was like, whoa, no, this is just for you, right? Like this is just your version of that. And so like how you're articulating belief systems is so spot on. I love the analogy of the table and the legs, because like these legs and things like religions specifically can really be supportive, wildly supportive. But now I want to get into like, how do we, one, you talked about kind of shadow work. Maybe we can like unpack that a little bit around what is that exactly. But then how do we, once we're aware of belief systems, evaluate which are the ones we would like to keep, which are the ones we would like to potentially, break apart from and or repackage into something that's more beneficial for our life.
Yeah. So one of the first ways to kind of begin to uncover your belief systems is to ask yourself, what are the emotions you feel on a daily basis? And write down every single emotion that you normally feel. Then circle all the ones that are negative. And then ask yourself, what causes me to feel those? Like if it's frustration, is it frustration because maybe there's something that we really want to do, but we believe we can't, or maybe we believe that, there's something that's stopping us or something like that. So there's also examples online. So if you're really lost, you could also just Google examples of like really common limiting beliefs. There's tons of examples, and you just kind of go through them and see like, oh, I actually really resonate with that one. So those are some of the ways that you can get to know what are your limiting beliefs. You can also get to know your fears that way. So is there a fear that's coming up in your life when you're feeling a negative emotion? And a fear is similar to a limiting belief as well. We may fear rejection. We may fear failure. Those are really common fears that we have. So we may have a belief system attached to those fears as well. We may believe like it's hard to do whatever you want to do, therefore you fear failure. You fear failure around that. So once you are aware of what your current belief systems are, then you can begin to ask yourself, what is the opposite of that? How could I change this belief to something that serves me? So instead of believing, I believe that I won't attain my dreams because it's really difficult. If you have that belief, write something down that's the opposite. So write down, my dreams are super easy to attain because I have these dreams, I have this visualization, therefore I can do it. Anything I visualize, I can do. And even though you may not believe that at first, and it may feel like really false when you're writing that down, you may feel like that's a fairy tale way of thinking that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense right now because it's not a strong neural pathway in your brain. So when we believe old thoughts, and we have a lot of support on that, you can almost see it as like driving down a road so many times. The tire prints are going to become so imprinted. That old way of thinking is so imprinted in your mind right now. The less you use it, the more that nature's going to overtake that road again. And it's going to break down. It won't. The less you fire a certain neuron, the less that you're going to wire it into your mind. But the more that you fire a new neuron, which is a new way of thinking, the more you're going to build that new road, that new neural pathway. So when you want to create a new belief, repeat that belief to yourself and also begin to embody it. So the 3 different ways to change your identity are repetition, awareness, and embodiment. Awareness actually comes first. So awareness of what's the belief that you want to have. Then you need to repeat it. Repeat that belief to yourself. Anytime that you catch yourself thinking in the negative way, if you notice fear coming up, if you notice the limitation coming up, repeat to yourself your new way of thinking. It's going to feel unnatural at first. You're going to question it. But the more that you repeat it to yourself, the more that you think it, the more you're going to wire in that new way of thinking. So awareness, repetition, and then embodiment. Embodiment, I like to do embodiment through meditation personally, but you can do embodiment in many different ways. And what embodiment means is think about how would you feel with this new way of thinking? Because if you can get a really powerful emotion behind a new way of thinking, you're going to create that new neuron much quicker if you match it with a powerful emotion. So think about, how would I feel if success became so easy to me? If my dreams became so easy? How would that feel? Who would I be? Start to embody that feeling, embody that emotion. And if you can do it with more power, if you can sit with that emotion for a long period of time, which is why I like to do that in meditation, you're going to create that new neural pathway in your brain much faster and much stronger. And then you can also look for evidence in your external world to back that new belief as well. So you can Google stories of people who maybe came from, really unsuccessful backgrounds and created the most success for themselves. The more that you can create that experience. That. Yeah. You can just Google examples of people that have done it anyway, because there's no way your belief system is cold, hard, solid truth if other people have proved it wrong.
Yeah,
right?
That's so true.
That's a really good reminder for me too, to put my head more in some of those stories of rags to riches stories, if you will. I'll give an example. This is perfectly articulated, and I'll give an example from my life. And I wasn't really even aware of this happening. This is just kind of like by happenstance, and your 3 steps of awareness, repetition, embodiment, so spot on as you're saying these back. I'm reminded when we got divorced, 2 years after we'd been divorced, I was just still harboring like bitterness and negativity in my life, and was so ready to be done with it and just get rid of this feeling. I would think about Megan or our life or our relationship, and it would just bring such bitterness into the way that I thought, the way that I acted, the relationships that I was having. And I was like, I am so ready to get over this. And I was reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And this awareness was like step one, was like, wow, this is not serving me any longer. And it's actually, continuing to deteriorate my lifestyle. And so I started this practice of like, every time I would think of Megan or think of our life or think of my past, I would just say the word change, which was based on his recommendation in the book. And as I would say that, I would go kind of the next step, which would be into this embodiment phase of when I would spend time in meditation, I would think about her and wish for the best. I would hope that she was successful, that she was happy, that she was healthy. Because honestly, when I would think about her previously, I had hoped that she wasn't doing well. Like out of the bitterness of my soul, I was like, I hope she's kind of like struggling, and so I was like, fuck, I have to get past this point, so past this point that when I think of her, I get like lit up with excitement for the things that she's creating in the world. I'd loosely known that she'd become an entrepreneur and things like that, which was helpful. But it was clunky. It was like not easy. It was like fucking nails on the chalkboard for a little while, but slowly and surely, like it really did start to change in my body. So much so that after months of doing this, we organically reconnect and I'm lit up by the reconnection as friends. Forgetting the fact that she was, my ex-wife and rather just like, wow, I'm so groomed in this way of thinking about you that as we've reconnected, and I think it like, blew you away in a lot of ways, because it was like, yeah, let's go. Let me hear about your life. I'm so excited for you. I know you're crushing it. And it was through these practices. Of course, I was not aware of these steps, but as you're saying this is the exact kind of route that I took for getting over the biggest challenge of, my very cushioned life.
And piggybacking on that, I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here now had you not done that.
No. Mm-mm.
Had you decided that it was going to be too hard or annoying, or that you just didn't want to, or that you liked living in the negativity of the bitterness, because that can be almost like its own weird like dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Pleasure hit in like the negative sense, kind of living in those negative thought loops. Had you not done that, like we wouldn't be sitting here today, because we wouldn't have met up. We wouldn't have reconnected. We wouldn't have started a new friendship. So I just wanted to kind of amplify the ripple effect that making a small decision like that, it's a big decision, but it's a small act, but with profound ripple effects. Like you have no idea doing what you just described, Leanna, could do for the rest of your entire life. It can totally transform.
Absolutely. Shifting like one belief system can completely change radically your entire life, because our belief systems actually like block our mind from expanding and creating a reality beyond those limitations. You will never be able to create a reality beyond your limitations, because the belief systems that you have are putting your mind into a box. Therefore, your mind is never going to think outside of the box unless you break down the belief. If you break down that wall, your mind is going to expand there. And so the reason why belief systems work, especially when it comes to like success or creating money or creating a great relationship, the reason why it works is because if you have a limiting belief that says money is really hard, your mind will never explore a thought that makes money easy. It will never explore a thought like that. And even if you think that you're exploring a thought like that, your limitation will never let you create an idea that you actually believe that you could do. And you'll notice that you either fail at it, or that even if you begin trying one of those ideas, you're going to get down on yourself, because that limitation is going to keep knocking on your mind saying, you can't do it. You can't do it. Why are you even spending energy over there? And you're going to get down on yourself and discontinue that path. So once you break down these belief systems, your mind will be able to go into a new realm, a whole new like place that you've never even explored before. And that's where you're going to get ideas out of the blue. That is going to be where you get these inspirations where you're like, oh my gosh, I just thought of an idea that I would have never thought of before. Yeah. And you're also going to have the ability to push through on that idea, because you no longer have that wall that keeps blocking you from exploring the idea further and going to actually make it happen.
Do you have an example of that in your life where you were able to identify a belief system that wasn't serving you and you were able to actually transform it?
Yeah, so many examples. One of them was, so actually going back to my childhood with spirituality. I grew up super spiritual, but I grew up more of a closet spiritualist because I was sort of raised with the notion that spirituality is not accepted and people are going to think you're really crazy and weird for believing in that. So don't ever talk about it. Don't ever do it with other people. Like the only person that I felt safe doing it with was my mom or some of my really close friends where I'd be like, hey, so I kind of like was learning this new thing. And they'd be like, oh, okay, they're kind of interested in it. Maybe I'll explore it with them. So there's a very few people that actually knew that I was spiritual. And I really wanted to find my purpose in life. And I was exploring like, what could that be? What could that be? And my mind didn't even think that I could do tarot or astrology because I just had this belief system like you can't talk about that stuff. So therefore it was not even an option I explored for myself to be my career. And there was a long time I was like trying to find myself in my career, which actually ended up being a divine thing because I ended up going to audio engineering school because I thought like, oh, being a producer would be really fun or doing something within music. And that actually had a major benefit for me. So I'm glad that I took that route. And so there's actually purpose behind all of our limitations. And maybe we can come back to that topic, but there's always purpose behind our limitations. Anyway, eventually, in my kind of early 20s, I was like, I really want to do this, but I need to kind of break through this limiting belief that spirituality is weird because I was like, I want to live my purpose. And I knew some people in my life at the time who were, living their spiritual lives and making a career out of it. And I just thought it was the most inspiring, most beautiful thing ever. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, I can't do that. And then I'm like, why? Why can't I do that? And it was this moment where I was like, wow, I have this belief system that I can't do it because I believe that I'm going to be mocked for it or judged. And it was a huge feeling of like fear of judgment. And eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm going to like liberate myself. I'm going to break free from that. And I'm just going to make a video. I'm going to take action on it to prove to myself that I can do it. So I still actually had this belief system when I started my spiritual YouTube channel, but I realized I had this belief, which made me realize that I need to start the YouTube channel. And so I did. And it took me some time to like break out of that fear because as I was making those videos, I was still kind of like really awkward and stuff. But the more that I did it, the more that I just put myself there, I noticed that people would say supportive things. There'd be a couple negative people here and there, but there would also be some supportive people. And I was like, I'm just going to start speaking to those, people that are supportive of this. And just breaking out of that, that's why I do what I do today. That's why like I've made spirituality my career. So that was one of the biggest things that I broke out of.
Yeah. And
super powerful.
That's huge. And it's obviously had a huge ripple in your own life, but then it also ripples out into other people's lives. Like thinking about how many people you've impacted or helped. Like we will never fully understand the impact, the positive impact. We can't know every way that it's positively impacting people. And even like trying to wrap your mind around that is like, it's boggling. But like that one decision had such a profound ripple effect throughout the collective. And that's honestly what I believe we need more of, and what so many of the issues and problems when we look at the individual, like in the world, so many of the issues and problems come down to is that person really following their soul's desire, their soul's dream? We don't need more inventions, more tech, more entrepreneurs, more business owners. We need more people who are living out their dreams, because that is what's going to give the individual purpose and drive and fulfillment in their life. And when we do that on an individual level, we are healthier, we're more positive, we have more direction in life, and then that ripples out into the collective. Like it's so clear to me, especially as we've been learning with like Paul Chek. He talks about this all the time. Any client that he works with, whether they're Kobe Bryant or a billionaire or, whoever, he starts with, what is your one dream? Because if you don't have a dream, if you don't have a labor of love, you're going to be sabotaging yourself. You're going to have this void, it's going to feel like. So I think so much of our issues in the world come back to really asking ourselves, like, am I living out my dream? Am I living out my purpose? Because it's like fuel to the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I feel like so many of us don't find our purpose, possibly because we have a belief system that says, don't even think about that because it's not possible. Just like for my example. So there may be a belief system that's holding you back from realizing what your purpose may be because that's just maybe an off limits area for you.
Yeah.
But if you work through those limiting beliefs, you may find your purpose. And another way to also find your purpose is to look at, and this is going to sound so backwards, but to look at your life where you've had the most pain and how you've healed that. When you can look at how you've healed some of your most traumatic or painful experiences in your life, that's actually where a lot of people's purpose comes from. For example, musicians found that music has healed their pain. Therefore, they became so fascinated with music that they became a professional musician. Or, for example, for me, I've worked through a lot of my pain through spiritual concepts and learning a lot about personal development, law of attraction, doing tarot and astrology. And I found my purpose within that. That's why that I became so passionate behind it. Because passion is an interesting emotion that you can be passionately in love with something or you can passionately hate something.
Yeah.
But if you want to cultivate more passion in your life, look at how you've healed, look at how you've transformed.
Yeah.
And if you still need to create a purpose, maybe you're going through a hard time right now, think about how can I heal that? And then you may find more of your purpose through that. Because we create our purpose. It's not just something that's arbitrary that we're like, oh, we need to go out and like find it in the world. We create our purpose. So how are you healing? And you've created like an amazing podcast. You found healing a lot through mushrooms, and look at what you're doing, like podcast mushrooms,
And there's still like, just being open, like belief systems still, I think have even like kept me chained to certain versions of myself over the last 3 years as we've launched this show and we talk about these various topics. We kind of recently publicly came out of the closet with psychedelics, which is like something we always danced around. Even being on video, we just started YouTube. My reservations were that I still have a foot in the real world, right?
The business world.
The business world. I'm talking to lawyers and bankers and investors. And I know the first thing they do is they look up my social and platforms and when they see, psychedelics mentioned, I'm like, oh Jesus, now I got to sort of like integrate this version of myself with the suits, right? The suits of the world. And I think it's kept me like chained to this version of myself in a lot of ways. And I've had such a hard time to reconcile both of these versions of myself. But yeah, now I'm just deeply curious, and it's a new idea and a new concept really, but just being like, what is that guy? Like if half my body is this like businessman and the other half is a psychonaut who, wants to push the edges of consciousness, like these motherfuckers are just going to have to deal with it. That's where I'm at right now.
Also, like,
thank you so much for listening.
if you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.